Chosen one, this message is not random. God said, watch this alone right now, because what you are about to understand requires focus, honesty, and spiritual readiness. There are moments when heaven pulls you aside, away from noise, away from opinions, away from distraction, to reveal something personal. This is not entertainment. This is confirmation. You have been sensing a shift. You have felt the pressure rising and the separation increasing. What is happening around you is not accidental. God is positioning you, protecting you, and preparing you, but you must see it clearly without interference from other voices. Chosen one, the separation you have been experiencing is not accidental, and it is not a sign that you are forgotten. It is divine protection unfolding in real time. What feels like loss is often shielding. What feels like rejection is frequently redirection. When God begins to elevate someone, He first begins to separate them, not to punish them, but to prepare them, not to isolate them permanently, but to insulate them temporarily. You may have noticed relationships shifting without clear explanation. Conversations that once flowed easily now feel strained. Connections that seemed solid have quietly faded. Invitations have slowed, support has changed form. At first it may have confused you. You might have questioned whether you did something wrong. You may have replayed interactions in your mind, searching for mistakes. But sometimes the answer is not correction. Sometimes the answer is calling. Not everyone assigned to your previous season is equipped for your next one. That does not make them bad. It simply means their role has been fulfilled. When God prepares you for greater responsibility, greater visibility, or greater impact, He removes influences that cannot handle the weight of where you are going. Some people are comfortable with you when you are accessible, relatable, and within reach. But when growth begins to stretch you beyond familiar limits, their comfort shifts. Separation often exposes hidden attachments. You may have been more emotionally tied to certain connections than you realized. You may have drawn security from familiar voices, familiar routines, familiar environments. When those begin to fall away, it can feel destabilizing. But that destabilization forces you to lean deeper into God rather than into people. Dependence shifts. Your foundation strengthens. There are conversations God will end because they carried subtle limitation. Words shape perception. If you remain surrounded by voices that doubt your potential, minimize your vision, or subtly compete with your progress, your growth will slow. Sometimes protection looks like distance. Sometimes protection looks like silence. Sometimes protection looks like doors closing without explanation. You might have wanted certain relationships to last. You may have prayed for restoration. But God sees trajectories you cannot see. He knows what environments will nurture your assignment and which ones will drain it. When separation happens without your initiation, it is often because He is intervening on your behalf. You cannot step fully into new levels while holding tightly to old alignments. Isolation is uncomfortable because humans crave connection. We are wired for belonging. So when distance increases, the immediate interpretation is abandonment. But divine isolation is different from rejection. Rejection pushes you away without purpose. Divine separation pulls you aside with intention. It creates space for clarity. It removes noise so you can hear direction. In seasons of separation, distractions decrease. You begin noticing patterns you overlooked before. You reflect more. You evaluate more honestly. You recognize where compromise was occurring. You identify where your energy was being depleted. Solitude becomes a mirror. It reveals strengths and weaknesses alike. And through that revelation, refinement begins. There are people who cannot go where you are going because your elevation will trigger their insecurity. If they remain close, their envy could subtly sabotage you. Not always through obvious betrayal, but through passive resistance, discouragement, or quiet undermining. God removes certain individuals not because you lack love, but because he loves you enough to guard your destiny. Separation also protects your focus. When major shifts are ahead, concentration becomes critical. Too many opinions create confusion, too much external input clouds discernment. God simplifies your circle so your hearing becomes sharper. When fewer voices are speaking, his voice becomes clearer. You may have noticed that even familiar environments feel different lately. Places that once energized you now feel draining. Activities that once excited you now feel empty. That shift is not random. It signals internal growth. As you evolve, your tolerance for misalignment decreases. What you once entertained no longer satisfies. What you once ignored now irritates your spirit. This is maturity, not arrogance. Protection sometimes feels like pruning. Branches must be cut for healthier growth. Pruning can look harsh from the outside, but without it, expansion would be limited. God trims what would overextend you. He removes what would hinder fruitfulness. You may mourn what was removed, but you will later understand the necessity. In seasons of separation, trust deepens. You are learning to rely on divine confirmation rather than human reassurance. You are learning to validate yourself internally rather than seeking constant affirmation externally. That shift increases spiritual strength. When you are no longer easily swayed by others' approval or disapproval, you become anchored. Some separations happen quietly, no dramatic argument, no explosive ending, just gradual distance. That subtle shift is often mercy. It allows release without destruction. It gives both parties room to grow separately without unnecessary conflict. Not every ending requires chaos. Chosen one, understand that protection does not always look like rescue in crisis. Sometimes it looks like removal before crisis arrives. There may be situations you were shielded from without ever knowing the danger. Conversations you were not present for. Plans that dissolved before they included you. Opportunities that fell through because they carried hidden complications. Protection can operate invisibly. You may feel misunderstood during this season. Others might misinterpret your distance as pride, or coldness. But you know it is alignment. You know your spirit is being repositioned. Not everyone will understand the shifts occurring within you, and that is okay. Explanation is not always required when obedience is present. As separation unfolds, your identity becomes clearer. Without constant external influence, you rediscover your authentic preferences, values, and vision. You remember who you were before expectations shaped you. That rediscovery is powerful. It restores confidence rooted in truth rather than performance. Loneliness may visit, but it will not stay permanently. This is preparation, not isolation for life. New alignments will form. New relationships will emerge that resonate with your evolved frequency. But those cannot enter fully until old attachments release. Protection also increases accountability. When distractions decrease, excuses fade. You can no longer blame stagnation on chaos around you. You are being positioned for growth that requires discipline. Fewer social obligations create more time for development. Fewer emotional entanglements create more mental clarity. Chosen one, do not chase what God removed. Do not reopen doors he closed. Trust the process even when it feels uncomfortable. Trust that what left was not sustainable for where you are headed. Trust that what is coming requires space. Separation is not a verdict against your worth. It is evidence of your value. God guards what he intends to elevate. He isolates what he intends to strengthen. He simplifies what he intends to expand. What feels like emptiness now will later reveal itself as protection. Stay patient in this pruning season. Stay faithful in this quiet transit. Ion. Because when the next chapter unfolds, you will realize that every ending was clearing the path for something greater. And you will thank God for the separations you once questioned. Chosen one, The pressure you've been feeling is not random, and it is not a sign that you are failing. It is proof that you are being prepared for promotion. Pressure is uncomfortable by design. It stretches, refines, and exposes weak areas that must be strengthened. Before elevation, there is always expansion, and expansion requires tension. You may have noticed that challenges have intensified. Situations that once felt manageable now seem heavier. Responsibilities have increased. Expectations have grown. The margin for error feels smaller. It can feel overwhelming at times, as if life is demanding more from you than you have to give. But what if that demand is evidence of capacity being built?
Promotion is not just about visible success. It is about internal readiness.
If God were to elevate you without strengthening you, the weight of new responsibility would crush you. So before the doors open widely, before the spotlight increases, before influence expands, refinement begins quietly. The stretching you feel is spiritual conditioning. Think about pressure as resistance training. Muscles grow under tension. Without resistance, there is no development. In the same way, your character expands under strain. Patience deepens when tested. Discipline strengthens when challenged. Faith matures when certainty is removed. What feels like restriction is actually construction. Pressure reveals what is unstable. It exposes habits that cannot follow you into the next level. It highlights emotional triggers that must be mastered. It brings hidden insecurities to the surface so they can be confronted. Without pressure, these weaknesses would remain unnoticed until they sabotaged greater opportunities. This season is preventative preparation. You may feel misunderstood more often now. When growth accelerates, alignment shifts. People who are comfortable with your previous level may not understand your new focus. They might interpret your seriousness as distance. They might call your discipline extreme, but they are seeing the surface of a deeper transformation. You are being recalibrated. There are days when exhaustion tempts you to retreat. Days when you question whether the pressure is worth it. But discomfort is not a sign to quit. It is often a sign to adjust. Growth is rarely convenient. It disrupts comfort zones. It requires shedding familiar patterns. That shedding feels vulnerable. Pressure also clarifies priorities. When everything feels intensified, you are forced to evaluate what truly matters. Distractions lose appeal. Time-wasting habits feel heavier. You become more intentional with your energy because you recognize its value. That intentionality prepares you for increased responsibility. Sometimes pressure comes in the form of silence. Prayers seem unanswered. Confirmation feels delayed. You are moving forward without immediate reassurance. That silence tests trust. It teaches you to rely on conviction rather than constant signs. Promotion requires faith that operates without visible proof. Other times, pressure manifests through opposition. Criticism increases. Doubt surfaces from unexpected places. You may feel scrutinized more than usual, but scrutiny refines excellence. It sharpens your communication. It strengthens your resilience. It forces you to solidify your understanding of who you are. When you are being prepared for something greater, your tolerance for mediocrity decreases. What once felt acceptable now feels insufficient. That dissatisfaction is not negativity. It is awareness expanding. You are recognizing your potential more clearly, and with that recognition comes responsibility to rise. Pressure also strengthens emotional regulation. When stress increases, reaction becomes tempting, but you are learning to pause. You are learning to respond strategically rather than impulsively. That self-control is crucial for leadership. Promotion without emotional stability leads to collapse. So you are being trained in composure. There is a refining fire in this season. Fire purifies gold by removing impurities. In the same way, this intensity is burning away doubt, fear, and complacency. It is uncomfortable, but it is cleansing. You are emerging clearer, stronger, more focused. You may have noticed that opportunities now require more discipline than before. Doors are not opening casually. They require preparation. They demand excellence. That demand is a signal. You are stepping into arenas that require maturity. Casual effort will not sustain you where you are headed. Pressure builds endurance. When challenges stack, you develop stamina. You learn that you can handle more than you thought. You begin to trust your resilience. That confidence carries into future situations. What once intimidated you now feels manageable because you have survived greater strain. There is also spiritual sharpening. Penning beneath the surface. Discernment increases under pressure. You become more sensitive to misalignment. You sense when something is off more quickly. That awareness protects you from distractions disguised as opportunities. Promotion requires clarity. Chosen one, understand that pressure is not punishment, it is preparation. It is evidence that growth is underway. If nothing was stretching you, nothing would be expanding. If everything felt easy, you would not be developing new strength. The weight you feel is building capacity. Capacity determines how much influence, responsibility, and impact you can sustain. Without increased capacity, greater blessings would overwhelm you. So this season is strengthening your foundation. Even your patience is being tested intentionally. Waiting under pressure builds stability. It prevents impulsive decisions driven by anxiety. It teaches you timing. Promotion often depends not just on readiness, but on patience. You may feel like you are being watched more closely. Expectations feel higher. That awareness sharpens accountability. It pushes you to operate with integrity even when no one appears to notice. Integrity under pressure builds trust. There will be moments when you question the intensity of this season. But look at how far you have already come. Look at the resilience you now carry. Look at the discipline that has developed. Look at the confidence that has quietly strengthened. These are signs of elevation in progress. Pressure separates those who are serious from those who are casual. It reveals commitment. It distinguishes desire from dedication. You are still here. You are still pushing forward. That persistent is evidence that you are being prepared, not defeated. Chosen one, do not resent this stretching. Embrace it. Lean into it. Ask what it is teaching you. Ask what it is strengthening within you. Because when the promotion arrives, when the opportunity expands, when visibility increases, you will realize that this pressure was necessary. You are not being crushed. You are being constructed. You are not being overwhelmed. You are being expanded. And when this season shifts, you will stand stronger, steadier, and fully equipped for what is next. Chosen one, the battles you have been fighting in private are not invisible to God, even if they have been unseen by people. What you endured quietly is not wasted. What you resisted silently is not ignored. There is a sacred pattern in how God develops his chosen. He strengthens them in hidden places before revealing them in visible spaces. The struggle you have faced behind closed doors is producing a victory that will not be able to stay hidden forever. There were moments when you felt alone in your discipline. No applause, no recognition, no one clapping for your restraint. You chose integrity when compromise would have been easier. You walked away from temptation when no one would have known if you stayed. You held your tongue when defending yourself would have felt justified. Those choices did not trend. They did not go viral, but they were recorded in heaven. Private battles are often the hardest because they test your character without external reward. It is one thing to do right when people are watching. It is another thing to choose righteousness when no one sees. That is where true transformation happens. That is where foundation is laid. God does not build public platforms on unstable private lives. So before elevation there is hidden refinement. You have fought mental battles no one knew about. Thoughts that tried to convince you to quit. Doubts that whispered you were not qualified. Fear that attempted to paralyze your next move. You did not always silence those thoughts instantly, but you did not surrender to them either. You kept moving. That persistence is powerful. You have cried prayers that no one heard. You have asked God questions you could not voice publicly. You have wrestled with disappointment in silence, and yet you continued showing up with strength. That is maturity. That is endurance. That is faith under pressure. Private obedience builds public authority. When you consistently choose discipline in hidden places, it shapes your spirit. It sharpens your discernment. It strengthens your confidence. So when doors open later, you are not scrambling to become ready. You already are. There is something sacred about hidden preparation. Seeds grow underground before they break through soil. Roots develop before branches expand. In the same way, your unseen seasons were not stagnant. They were strategic. While it felt like nothing was happening, everything was forming. You may have wondered why progress felt slow, why recognition did not come when you expected, why others seemed to advance more quickly. But God measures readiness differently than people do. Public promotion without private stability leads to collapse. So your delay was not denial, it was development. The battles you fought shaped your perspective. You no longer react the same way. You no longer trust blur and a lie. You no longer compromise easily. Experience taught you wisdom. Pain refined your discernment. Solitude deepened your self-awareness. These qualities cannot be manufactured overnight. You resisted becoming bitter. That alone is victory. It would have been easy to harden your heart after betrayal. It would have been easy to shut down emotionally after disappointment. Instead, you healed intentionally. You forgave slowly. You rebuilt carefully. That process required courage. God often hides his chosen during seasons of growth, not to diminish them, but to protect them. Exposure too early can attract pressure that you are not yet equipped to handle. So while others were visible, you were being fortified. While others were celebrated, you were being strengthened. Hidden battles produce humility. When you know what you survived internally, you carry gratitude differently. Success does not inflate your ego because you remember the nights you questioned everything. Recognition does not distract you because you understand the cost of growth. The discipline you practiced privately is building credibility for your future. When people eventually see the results, they will call it sudden. But you will know it was not sudden. It was built in prayer, in tears, in perseverance. It was constructed through countless small decisions that no one witnessed. There is also power in restraint. You could have exposed certain truths. You could have defended yourself aggressively. You could have responded to attacks publicly. But you chose silence in many cases. That silence was not weakness, it was trust. You trusted that God would handle what you did not need to. Private battles also reveal your motives. When no one is watching, you discover whether you are driven by purpose or by attention. You continued your work even without applause. That consistency proves your intention was pure, and purity carries weight in the spiritual realm. Chosen one, what you endured was not random suffering. It was conditioning, it was preparation, it was alignment. The strength you now carry did not appear overnight. It was forged in places where quitting felt tempting. Your silent obedience is about to speak loudly. The clarity you gained will guide you publicly. The resilience you developed will sustain you visibly. The patience you practiced will stabilize you when momentum increases. God does not waste hidden seasons. Every prayer you whispered strengthened your connection. Every sacrifice you made strengthened your discipline. Every tear you shed watered unseen growth. You may not have felt strong while you were fighting those battles. Strength often feels like exhaustion in the moment. It feels like continuing despite fear. It feels like holding on when letting go seems easier. But looking back, you see evidence of resilience you did not recognize at the time. The victory coming is not about proving others wrong. It is about revealing what God built in you quietly. It is about showcasing endurance that was cultivated in private. Continue honoring the lessons of your hidden season. Do not rush visibility. Do not crave attention prematurely. Trust timing, because when the shift happens, when doors open widely, when recognition increases, you will stand confidently knowing you were prepared properly. Chosen one, your private battles were not pointless. They were purposeful. They were producing strength, wisdom, and depth. And soon what was developed in silence will manifest in strength that cannot be ignored. Chosen one, nothing you endured in silence was wasted. Every hidden battle built unshakable strength within you. What felt lonely was actually preparation. What felt delayed was divine timing. Now you stand stronger, wiser, and more aligned than ever before. Trust that what was formed in private will soon manifest in power. Stay faithful, stay disciplined, and stay ready, because the victory ahead will reflect the resilience you built when no one was watching.